Well, hey everyone. My name is Jim Nolan. I'm a customer success advisor here at Novi Labs. I focus mainly on our data product and the Insight Engine platform, which hosts it. And today we're going to be doing a live webinar with some Q&A about the Haynesville Basin. So let's take a look at that together right now. All right. So let's kind of start at the high level and talk about the Haynesville holistically. Then we'll kind of dive in and start taking a look at the data. So let's start with the first question, which is why are people talking about the Haynesville right now? Well, the most obvious answer is gas prices have gone up. We're seeing, the 12-month strip is looking at about $4 an MCF, which is way better than the $2 and change that there used to be way back when I first started up about a decade ago here in the oil and gas industry. So really good to see those prices recovering and making more areas economic. So if we're looking at the Haynesville, I'm going to go over here to my total production graph and just kind of take a look at the big picture. So here we have our top three most productive basins. We've got our Appalachian Basin up there in the Northeast. Based on 2024 numbers, the Appalachian was about 30% of the gas produced in the lower 48, but they've got some challenges. Particularly pipeline takeaway is really constrained. So a lot of the activity going on in the Appalachian is more about maintaining the production numbers and meeting pipeline demand. The second most productive region is our Permian Basin region. And this might come as a shock to a lot of folks because in the Permian, gas isn't even really the focus. Most people are looking for oil there. And when they start producing gas, the question becomes, do I drill another oil well or do I build out some gas infrastructure so I can have more takeaway for this gas volume? They're essentially like giving it away out there in the Permian because there's not enough capacity to pull it away. The math usually breaks out so that you'll probably want to drill another oil well before you'll want to bring on more pipeline capacity to take away the gas. So you'll end up with a lot of flaring, a lot of sometimes even negative price takeaway from the Permian. So not a lot of desire to produce gas out there at this point in time. And then we've got our Haynesville. The Haynesville produced about, I think it is somewhere around 13% of 2024's gross gas production. And people are looking over here now. It's easier to get takeaway capacity over to the refineries along the Gulf. And there's already a lot of existing infrastructure because gas is the desirable hydrocarbon takeaway from this region. So we see, in addition to, the gas making more well spots profitable, we're also seeing other infrastructure investments, things like more pipeline takeaway. Some LNG terminals are also of interest along that takeaway region. And then we even have seen discussions of, a lot of data centers are being talked about. And if you can run them on natural gas, well, why not put them close to the natural gas producing basins? So a lot of interest there in the Haynesville because you can actually grow, right? You can't take it away in the Permian. You can't really grow more in the Appalachian, but the Haynesville actually has a lot of runway here to deliver gas to the refineries. So if we zoom out here, if you're unfamiliar, there's our Appalachian, there's our Permian, there's our Haynesville over here in this East Texas, northwestern Louisiana area. So I'm just going to pop over into my filter tray here, and I'm going to filter down to that area. So let's go and take a look at the Haynesville Basin a little bit more closely. Click apply. We'll get our filter. Let's zoom on in here. I like to look at this like the 60-month timeline right here. Okay, so the Haynesville Basin, super interesting. 150 million years ago, this was a part of an extension of the Gulf. You had to the northeast the prehistoric Mississippi River Delta dumping just like tons of sand and other organic matter into a basin that was formed right around here. And there were a couple of islands around the area here and here that kind of sheltered that deposition and prevented it from getting disrupted by a lot of the ocean and currents. So it was able to settle, and it eventually became this Haynesville Basin that we're looking at. So I'm going to go over here And if we're talking about this basin kind of at just a descriptor level, here we're looking at structural depth. So you can see this green region right down here in the south is deeper, and then we have this shallower region up here along the right. I mean, kind of smack dab right along the border here. So you're going to see a lot of activity right here. I believe this is DeSoto County, um, and then over here it's Shelby County and Panola. So these guys right here are where you'll see a lot of activity in this region. So that's just a quick overview of the Haynesville at a macro level here. We'll kind of scoot over. So I just have a couple of dashboards built out here to let us take a look at the data. So I'm going to pan over to my Haynesville horizontal wells dashboard. All I've done here is I filtered down to just horizontal wells and the top 10 operators and their producing wells in that Haynesville basin. So if you're looking for a list of who has the most wells in this area, well, right down here in our legend, we've got Expand Energy around 2,000 wells, Comstock at about 1,000, Aethon sitting around 900 actively producing horizontals, um, and TG Natural Resources and Exco kind of rounding out the top five here. Um, Expand Energy, if that's a newer name to you, don't be surprised. It's actually a recent creation. It was the merger between Chesapeake and Southwestern. Chesapeake had a long time been in this area developing, so kind of consolidated and became, well, as you can see, right, the next two biggest operators don't even reach that number of operating wells. So um, definitely the major player in this region. Aethon is the largest private company in this area. They've got about 900 wells. TG Natural Resources, short for Tokyo Gas Natural Resources. They are a Japanese conglomerate. They take away the oil, sorry, not oil, they're taking away the gas. And their option is to, once they get it produced and turned into a usable gas stream, they either send it back to Japan to power their electrical grid, or they can kind of get some arbitrage and send it off to Europe. Just some options for them there. So if we're looking here at which operators have the most wells, let's take a look at where these wells are. So a little trick I like to use is I'll pop over here into my filter tray. If I look at my county list here, it'll actually group and count up all of the records by the options in this tray here. So we can see DeSoto County has the most active wells at about 2,000. Next to that's Red River with 680, Caddo with 660, Panola and Harrison kind of uh, behind them at 650 and 368 respectively. And we can even take a look at these operators to figure out where are they operating specifically. So over here, I'm just going to select Aethon, and it'll highlight their tranche of wells as well as their production stream, so we can see their average gas rate. This is a MCF per day, so you can see they're peaking at about 10K on average for their 890 producing wells. Pretty good overall, I'd say, right around that average mark. But it looks like their production profile is a little bit better than average through time too. Deselect there. We have some interest in Expand, right? They're the biggest player in this area. So if we click on their operator name here, we'll see, okay, they're producing a little bit better. Their peaks are at about 1,500 MCF per day. Pretty good to see. You can see that they've got a very solid and consolidated position right here in this core of the play. And if we look back here, right, that's right here in this area. So you can see that they're kind of right along that fairway of shallow producing zones that are a little bit cheaper to produce from. And then just because I mentioned them, we can also go ahead and highlight TG Natural Resources. So you can actually see they have two separate positions here. They have this area up here in Lincoln, kind of that northeast section. Maybe not the best drilling. Lots of sand got deposited in with the shale at that point in time, so a little bit harder to drill there. But there's this recent East Texas, I guess it's West Haynesville, but East Texas development in Panola and Harrison County. I believe this is part of a joint venture with Chevron that they recently started up. I think they took like a 70% interest stake in some acreage from Chevron. So they're going to continue to develop this region right here. Be interested to see if they ever try and jump over into this area, but Caddo, DeSoto, Red River, we can see it's very well developed. Expands in there. Comstock and Aethon are both there as well. This blue one, GEP Haynesville too. They're also kind of down in the South DeSoto, North Sabine region. Um, might be a little crowded, but they do have a big tranche of land that they can work with over here in East Texas. Okay, so if we're just going to kind of look at the raw figures here, right? I've got my production streams through time. We're just doing type curves, right? We're averaging out the wells per current operator, so the current operator of the well. We're doing rate versus time, and we're looking at it on a logarithmic and daily view. But we can do some more here. So we can even do a normalization by the lateral length in here. So let's go ahead. We'll choose lateral length, and we'll take a look at that 5-year time horizon and give ourselves a little bit more space here. There we go. So now we can see that once we start to kind of normalize our production curves by the lateral length, we start to get some new information developing here, right? We start to see uh, different gas rates. Exco jumps up, Paloma as well. And then we've got Comstock and BP, followed by Aethon. So it kind of restacks the chart a little bit once we start to normalize values by that lateral length rate. Okay. So that's just a quick exploration of some of the production data that we're able to look at in here. Um, it's a pretty handy tool to be able to just really quickly summarize your production by applying a couple of filters from the tray to dig around and take a look at the details. Um, Now this chart here, we're looking in the production tab, so we're kind of focused on production data. We do have some more options if we jump over here into productivity. So if we're looking at the outbound production, maybe we want to start taking a look at completion details and other values that are available at the well level to get an idea of how they're completing these wells to realize those production gains. So I'm just going to pan over to my productivity tab. And I was playing around with this a little bit earlier, just so that I had something to work with. And what I'm doing here is I wanted to take a look at proppant per lateral foot as kind of like a way of understanding cost metrics a little bit, right? Because if we're not looking at the takeaway costs, we're looking at completion costs. Things like how much proppant are you loading per lateral foot can be a good stand-in for that, or a good understanding of who's spending more money to complete their wells. So I'm just going to trim this down to more recent vintages, maybe 2019 onwards. And what we're seeing here is each point on this graph is is an average for the wells that were brought online in that period of time. So let's see, we can see Aethon up here around 4,500 pounds per lateral foot, kind of dipping down. Oh, almost 1,000 pounds per lateral foot. That's a recent development to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, you've got Osaka Gas. They're kind of down here, maybe number 8 out of the top 10 by well count. They're kind of jumping there. Oh, well, it's a single well, but it looks like they're trying something new here. The first well they brought on in 2025 seems to have gone up by about 1,000 pounds per lateral foot. So they're experimenting with some of those higher pressure fracs. Sorry, not pressure, higher proppant intensity fracs. We can generally see that the trend is kind of up and to the right for proppant intensity through time. Down here, we have, we call this our violin plot. At a base level, it's a box and whisker chart, but instead of it just being the box and whiskers, you actually get the distribution. So for example, Osaka Gas, you can see that they have kind of two different completion phases that it looks like they've been trying out, right? You've got these less intense, this bubble right here in the less intense zone of 1,500 pounds per lateral foot, it looks like. And then another bump out here right around 4,000 pounds per lateral foot. So it looks like through time, maybe these are some of the older wells over here, but the newer wells, they seem to be going with that new completion design. Then you've got Paloma, who's pretty much always above 3K pounds per lateral foot, up to, wow, 5,200 pounds per lateral foot. And then Aethon, they're doing very heavily intensive fracs right here at about, what would you say that is? Median saying 4,500 pounds per lateral foot. And that shouldn't really be too much of a surprise. It's a gas play. It's deeper. There's more pressure, so it's going to take more proppant to kind of wedge those fractures open and allow the hydrocarbon to flow. It is interesting to see Exxon over here, kind of in that 2K region, along with TG and Exco. Um, but what else can we look at? So let's take a look at fluid design too. So let's do fluid per lateral foot. And all I'm doing here is just changing my y-axis and getting these two charts to kind of pair together, right? We'll see the explanation of the changes through time up at the top here, but then down here we'll see that full distribution of the data. Um, Pretty interesting. We see Exxon kind of jump up a little bit. They were down here, but now they've kind of increased their fluid per lateral foot, so they're increasing fluid intensity. It could be a virtue of them being more down in this southeast or southwestern portion of the Haynesville. It's the deeper area, harder to drill to, might need some more fluid in order to either float the prop in or get it into those cracks. Um, Paloma, we've got here as well. Let's see where they're at. Okay. Yeah, so they're kind of like along the northern extent of the play. Um, could be an interesting design choice for them there. But it is interesting to see that in general, you see all these lines here, they seem to have converged and kind of stayed flat on the proppant per lateral, or sorry, on the fluid per lateral foot trends through time. Yeah, let's take a look just in general, right? So we've got proppant per lateral. What's it look like for an average? Let's just do it by basin, right? So if we were to look at 2019 in general, right? 3,500 to 3,700, there's a pretty narrow band there. So it seems like there's been maybe a conversion on completion design choices in the area. Not a lot of delineation there. And then what about lateral lengths, right? That can sometimes be an influence on this. So it looks like back in 2019, we're about, okay, mile and a half, a little bit less than a mile and a half. And then today, they're around 8,700, so 75 to 8,700. Um, that's not a big jump. You typically see larger jumps through time as, drilling has gotten better and better. People are drilling longer and longer wells, but there is a little bit of a constraint in the Haynesville. It's been heavily developed throughout, the entire shale revolution that's been going on. So there's a lot of 1 mile unitized blocks. It's a little bit harder to get those 2 or 3 milers in the basin. So they're kind of constrained by that bit of information on the basin here. So you might not see like in the Appalachian Basin, right, where they're drilling those massive like 2, 3 milers and getting huge production rates from them. Um, might not be an option here. Maybe there's some other tracts of land that have those large blocks available, and drilling those 2, 3 milers is an option. But the core of the play in this region that we've kind of discussed isn't really conducive to that. Yes. So I know a lot of people are also interested in the development of the Western Haynesville. So I did do a little bit of digging, and I found a chunk of wells that would be classified as that deep Haynesville play. So if you're not familiar, this is right. We have our standard Haynesville play is probably right over here a bit more, right along the basin area. But this is kind of that far western extent, right? We're deep into Texas at this point. Um, it's Freestone, Limestone, Robertson, and Leon counties is where this area seems to be. So it's a pretty narrow fairway that people are trying to land these wells in. Um, But if you can do it at an economic way, I think I understand why you'd want to do this. I mean, if we look over here at the gas rates, MCF per day, right? We're seeing 30,000 MCF per day. You compare that to, core Haynesville areas, right? Back here on our other charts. Um, Here we go. Let me just take a look here. Let's denormalize so that we'll look at just that rate through time. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want to see, right? So here's our peaks up here, right around expands getting 15, right? But Comstock and Aethon are over here getting 30. So it it makes you wonder, like, why aren't people drilling everything over here? The answer is it is deeper than even the deepest general Haynesville areas, which means you've got to use special rigs, special casing, even more proppant per lateral foot than we're seeing in the deepest Haynesville wells over in the core of the core. Um, and it kind of increases the price to the point where it's economic at kind of like a higher dollar per MCF rate than the Haynesville general area. And this is kind of like the northeastern extent of the Eagleford too, so there might not be as much capacity to take away gas from this region. But we do have some really interesting wells in here. Cume 12 months. We got this one right here. Let's see, brought on in 2023 by Comstock. If we look at that production, you're seeing some really crazy rates. We flip this over to monthly just to get like monthly values. Almost a million MCF a month I'd say that's a pretty good return. Um, so yeah, definitely something to keep an eye at as gas prices are around $4, maybe four and a quarter. Maybe this region becomes even more attractive at gas prices like that with returns like this. Just depends on whether or not you have the expertise and know how to drill a deep well like that. And if you have if you're willing to stomach the volatility of uh, the market a little bit. Okay. Yeah, so let's see here. So that was just a quick overview of some of the data that we're able to explore together here in the Insight Engine platform. I mean, we can drop down in here, right, in these deep Haynesville wells and see proppant per lateral foot. We're seeing what, 3,500, maybe about 4K pounds per lateral foot. We're seeing a minimum 4,500 up to 5.1. So they're really cramming a lot of sand down in these wells. Um, how are we seeing on lateral lengths? Lateral lengths, we have, yeah, actually even higher than what we're seeing over in the Haynesville core. But again, this is a pretty small sample size, about what, 18, 30 so some odd wells. And some of them aren't showing up just because they don't have 12 months of production yet. It is that new. So just something to keep an eye on in the development here in this Western Haynesville extent. So a lot of this was actually something that I wanted to throw this webinar together because we are working with our own internal team of analysts. If you're interested in signing up and getting a sneak preview, we do have a couple of free levels, tiers of access that'll get you into our intelligence platform and give you an ability to um, kind of see some of the landing page and get an idea of the data that we're working with and is available. So let me just take a look there. So if you're interested, this is what the intelligence portal is going to look like for the Novi intelligence team. We're focusing on basin research, supply forecast, corporate analysis, and then just general industry updates, right? You get a message on X or Twitter or however you call it these days, and if it looks interesting to you, it's interesting to our analysts, and they're building out reports. So we recently published a Q1 Haynesville analysis where we graded remaining locations for the top operators in the area. So if you're interested in runway and understanding of that, we do have a handful of options available to view that. And I mentioned them once or twice, TG Natural Resources. They just solidified an expansion with Chevron, so we have an analysis of that here too. So done by our very own Robert Polk. So again, if you're interested in taking a look at this, I'll just full screen it here. You can scan this QR code and get an idea of the data that's available and what we're working on here. Okay, well, let's start with the first question. So we do have, what methodology do you use for forecasts for a gas well? That is a good question. Yeah, so we are using we use a PDP forecast model to forecast the production for our wells here. Um, it is a decline curve analysis, but a little bit more put into it than that. We're using our machine learning uh, PDP forecast to do it. So it's not just a maybe a county level or a section level. It's an individual well forecast is what we have in Novi Labs. And
Yep.
then,
If I may, just to expand
of
on
course,
that a little bit. So, as you know, one part of what Jim has presented today is our data and a web application for you to visualize the data that we have. But a set of applications that we have involve machine learning algorithms. And the particular machine learning algorithm that is used for PDP forecasting is a time series machine learning algorithm that basically is a rollover window that learns from the prior production, learns from all the information, well header information, geo properties of the wells around the area. And with that, basically it forecasts 3 years ahead on from the day, from the day of the last actual value of production. And after those 3 years that you are using your machine learning result, then we feed ARPS curve to all the way to EUR. And we do this for every single well. And so that's why you have a forecast that basically is unique for every single one of them.
hmm yeah, thank you, Jorge. That's way more detailed.
And so yes, we have back tested to see accuracy as well. And as you
hmm
can imagine, with the more years of production you have, the accuracy becomes uh, better and better. But we have seen, results in which you have few months of production, a couple months, and we also get better accuracy than other standard methods. And that is because we are informing the model with not only the production that this particular well has, but also all the neighborhood wells.
Okay, and I think someone was asking about um, filters that are applied. Sure, I have a couple of filters that are applied in a couple of different views here. The first one, I'm just looking at horizontal wells that are in the Haynesville Basin, and I filtered it down to just producing wells. If anyone has any interest in looking at things like spud wells or approved permits, right, get an idea of who could ramp up their activity in this area quicker, we can filter down to that as well. So let me just show that real quick. Right, we're talking about winners. We can talk about who has the best chance to kind of scale their growth from here. These wells don't have any production available, so they're not going to show up in the charts here. But we can see, for example, which counties have the most of these taken out. So here we go. Let's just, I'm going to change my color to this last well status so that we can see spud and approved permits. So if we wanted to see counties here, right, we've got DeSoto, Caddo, San Augustine, and Panola, as well as Red River, kind of that top five right there. Um, but if we want to see just spuds, right? So where are the most spud wells? And these are wells that have a spud date, but not no production or completion information associated with them. So these guys got most of them in DeSoto, San Augustine, Panola, similar names. What about permits? These are just going to be wells that have been approved to drilled, but we don't have any notification of spud. I wonder if the math changes a little bit here. It does, yeah. Caddo kind of leapfrogs DeSoto, and Harrison kind of jumps up the charts too. So these are our top three most permitted counties in the platform currently. Okay, couple more questions online. Can you see well level gathering system connections and available capacity to move nominations from gatherer to gatherer? Not yet. That's not currently loaded into Insight Engine. I think we'd have to find a source for that as well. Um, is there a way to chart spuds over time? Not yet. The charts in here are mainly focused on production data, but we do have plans to get this kind of enhanced through time, just so you can stand it up like that. Oh, I guess I didn't talk about the filters in here. For this one, we actually have in order to kind of like pick these out of the Eagleford, um, I went in and we have them tagged as Haynesville Shale. And then I picked these four counties where the activity is going on. So there's those four counties that I mentioned a minute ago. And then I filtered it down to the most recent production year, so 22, 23, 24. I noticed that there were some other wells that fit into the category that were older, but they had completely different completion designs, different TVDs, so they were probably not targeting that deep Haynesville formation. So I just kind of trimmed them out of my analysis. Okay. Which permit is the most impactful in this region? Which permit could bring the most production in the first year? James, that is a good question. Um, yeah, let's take a look. So we're talking about permits, right? I'm just going to go in here and past production, not a metric of future performance. I will take a look at the cumulative 12-month gas to create kind of a heat map here. And maybe it'll look a lot more sensible if I filter down to just these horizontals. Okay. So let's see, we have our best producers, right? So these are top two production buckets, kind of centered around here. So let's see, we have 4 million as our cutoff. So let's use that as a cutoff. I'm just going to call that filter out of our repository of filters and set that for 300, 123, like that. So filter down to a new selection of wells. Okay. So let's see, probably somewhere along this fairway here. We're seeing a lot of productive wells. So I'll just kind of box it off really quick. And then I'll change my filters around. So let's look at just permits in that area. Okay. Ooh, that's what I want to do. Current operator there. Okay. So number of permits in this area. Looks like Paloma's got a good bit. Same thing with BP. There's Chevron, which will probably become TG when it's actually completed, since that's part of that contiguous acreage that they just picked up. Um, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Hearing that Western Haynesville is experiencing some takeaway issues. Yep, must be choked back for periods of time. Western Haynesville, how do you all forecast choked wells? Yeah, that's a good question. That kind of information isn't really included in the production reports, right? They're not going to tell you the choke. You might get it on the IP tests, but you won't see it in the actual data set that's coming from the state, particularly Texas, right? Which is only giving you that well level production, since they are gas wells, right? Um, So we're basically taking the rates that it's produced at in our forecasts for the wells. So if it's been choked back, they may be able to, go full choke and increase the production that way. But that's uh that's not something that we have insight into until the production actually changes. Luckily, they are gas wells, so we'll be able to see it at a well-to-well level, unlike oil, which is at the lease level for the state of Texas. Okay. Some questions about our forecasting algorithm. Tough to forecast. Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to see. It is a task to that I think we might be able to work around, especially since the IP test will have it'll give you the inches of as a fraction of I think 64. It'll tell you how much the choke was. So we should be able to do this going forward. Okay, some more questions here. Is the weighting your production forecast algorithm utilizes for each forecast visible to the user? Can can I confirm my assumptions that it automatically dynamically reweights the data? Do you report out what the historical accuracy or confidence interval you achieved by prior forecasts over a reasonably defined period?
Yeah, so yes, you can see all the forecasts for every unique well. You
Hmm.
can show that.
Yeah.
Um,
So we call that's our production forecast segments table, right?
yeah, there are two ways of basically getting the forecast. One is by visualizing it here on the tool. So by looking at the production,
Here we go.
yeah, tab, yes, you
Yep.
can
We
click
have
on
this
that.
little button right here.
That's right. And so that will show you those extension that was, for every single well, you should have one. Obviously, when you are selecting here, per se, an aggregation method, then you will see those aggregated, but you can do the same and see it per well if needed in the well carrier. So that's the first one, right? How do you can see it, the forecast per well. You can export it out as you were showing, Jim,
Hmm. Yep. So
so you can.
you can get the monthly forecasts out through here, right? Oil, gas, water, forecast all three streams
Correct.
like that. If you want to see things like what were the assumptions that were put into the decline curve that was stitched onto my production, you can get that as well. So looks a little something like this, right? V
That's
factor,
correct.
nominal decline, start stop
Uh,
dates. Yeah.
and those are after the forecast result that was done with the machine learning
Hmm.
method. So the machine learning method gets you, as I said, 3 years after the last month of production, and then we will be using these segments as we give you all the details for you to replicate it. In terms of the accuracy, that's not something that we show here, but if there is interest, happy to sit down with anybody in particular and show you how we do this and show you some of the levels of accuracy that we achieve on some of these wells. Just give me a call or give Jim a call. I'm happy to sit with you all.
Yeah. Always happy to hop on the call with anyone interested in running around in our data sets. Okay, great. Well, I think we're actually coming up on time here. I don't see any new questions that have rolled through. But if you do have any questions, you can feel free to contact me. Uh, my my inbox is jnolan@novilabs.com. Jorge's on here. He's jgarzon@novilabs.com. Happy to answer any follow-up questions that may come up. Again, thank you everybody for your time and attention. Really appreciate it. And it's fun kind of exploring the data set here in the Haynesville. If you're interested in the access to our intelligence portal, I'll just put this up again. It's a little QR code that'll sign you up so that you can see what we're working on, what we're cooking up back in the kitchen, and yeah, get deeper insights here. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.